Hi everyone. Today I'm discussing about generics in Java. So what is generics? Generics means single data type can treat as any type of data is called generics. Okay. So single data type can treat as any type of data means like for suppose integer, float, okay, character or string, any type of data. Okay. So all data type treat as single data type, that is called generic type. So generic, that is a symbol is less than greater than, within that I define one character, that is a character name is t. Okay, so for suppose if you declare this is a generic type, this is a integer type, it is a generic type. So using this reference t reference, I define value. Like for suppose here using integer, how to define int a. Okay, like a is a what type of data? Integer type of data. Okay, so here is value is what type of data? Generic type, template, t for template, generic type of data. So but here is a value can store only integer type of value only. We cannot store any float type of data or any character or any string also we can't store. Only integer type of data only we can store into this a value. But here this variable can store any type of data is called generics. Okay, value variable can store any type of data is called generics. So generally generics are defined in four types. One is a variable declaration, generic variable we can define, or generic method also we can define, or generic class also we can define, or interface also we can define. A generic variable or method or class or interface. So what is the syntax of those things? So generic variable, already we know about this. So generic variable, this is a syntax for generic variable. And what about method? So generally method, how to define? Void display, this is a method declaration. Okay, before start the method, here I define t. So this is called generic type, generic method. Okay, next how to define generic class? Syntax is class, for suppose class name is test. So generic class, how to define? So this is a symbol of the generic, then t, then this is a syntax of the generic class. Then generic interface, itr less than greater than symbol t. Okay, so this is a generic interface declaration. Okay, so these are the syntax of those properties like generic variable or generic method or generic class, generic interface. Okay, so these are the things we have to see in practical. See here, so test is a one class. So how to define generic class t? Okay, this is a generic class. So if you define generic class, within the class we can define generic variables also. How to define t value? So without generic class declaration, can I define generic variable? No, it is not possible. If I remove this one, then automatically it show an error. Okay, what is those things? Okay, so then only it's possible, first thing. And see here I define one constructor test. Within that constructor I define one generic variable value 2. So this means class level variables. This dot value equal to in constructor variable name value 2. Okay, when I create an object I pass different types of values. Okay, because of different types of values it can store, because generic type t means you can store any type of data. Okay, so when I create the object on the time I pass integer or string, different types of values I can store. So those are the values are stored into class level variable. The class level variable I printed through method system.out.println, the value is value. Okay, it's the method. Next, so how to create object of integer t1 equal to new test integer. So here I pass 66. Okay, t1 dot display. Okay, so here what happened here is, so I declare as an integer. So now test class can store, the memory can store integer type of values. That is the meaning of this one. Okay, if I define this generic, this memory can store into this memory the values are must be integers only. Okay, so now here 66 is passed into that constructor variable. The constructor variable is stored into the class level variable. Okay, so with this reference I call display method, then display method is print class level value. Okay, same similar to here I declare one more object with the thing is string. Here is string type of object. Now we need to pass only string only. Okay, soft core. Okay, t2 dot display. Okay, so when I pass the string into this constructor, then that value is stored into class level variable. Okay, the variable also template type of value. Okay, previously I stored integer, now I passed string. Okay, so the passing value, the soft core is stored into value to variable. The value to variable is stored into this dot value. This dot value means this means class level variable. Okay, so this reference I calling display method. Now the value is soft core. See here result. Yeah, previous is 66, now soft core is a value. Okay, so here generic class and generic variable. Then what about generic method? How to define generic method? The syntax of the generic method is like this: void access. Okay, so here I can define generic variables also. Val. Okay, system.println print val variable. So this is called generic method. Okay, it is not support to class, generic class. See, when I remove in the past this symbol, it is error, it's shown error, because without class declaration we can't define any variable, but it doesn't affect to this method because it's a separate generic method. Okay, see here, when I remove this symbol, then it's affect to this variable, and wherever I am using this t, here also t, and this is the value of this variable, and this is affect to the class level. We are not defined here is generic class, that's why we show it's the integer and string specific generic type. Okay, but it doesn't affect to this generic method, it's separate. Okay, so then t we can use within this method also. Okay, okay, so how to call that generic method using this reference name also, no issue. T1 dot access, I pass 55. Yes, 55 value is printed here. Okay, so we can I pass string? Can I pass here core? This is a string. Can I pass? Yes, no issue. Okay, can I pass boolean value? Yes, because the value can treat as any type of data. Generic variable, this is a generic variable. So generic class is done, generic variable is done, generic method also is done. Then what about generic interface? So how to define generic interface? Interface start with interface keyword, interface itr. T. So here public abstract void access. Here I define declare as a t. So because of interface is a generic interface, then the t, the generic variable you can define within that interface anywhere. Okay, so for suppose here this class is implement that interface, implements itr. So this is a interface is a generic type. So what we require to implementations, whatever abstract methods is there, those methods must be implemented in that subclass. That is a rule, mandatory. Okay, without abstract keyword, entire thing is copy and paste without abstract keyword. That is the implementation of abstract method. So test class access method done. Then can I call this one, this method? Yes, using test class object test t is equal to t dot access. Here pass 99, no issue. Yeah, done. So value variable also I want to print, then here we declare value 99. So can I pass any other integer values? Sorry, strings also? Soft Yes, different types of values also can pass. Okay, so that is the implementation. For suppose if can I change here generic type this thing? No, because of I'm using here generic type of variable, so then must be defined here also. Okay, so simply generic is a subclass of object class. Object is a superclass of every class. Okay, object is a superclass of every class. So for suppose if I remove this one, then we can define here object type. Object, no issue. Okay, so only one option is object. Object is a superclass of every class. Okay, yes, this is a generics. Generic is single data type, can treat as any type of data. First thing, so generics are defined either variable or method or class or interface. So those are also were implemented as a practically done. So this is a generics. Okay, thank you.